This is my Arizona. And as you'll see, right in the middle, we have got a cactus. Now, what happens to those crazy people that eat peyote cactus? They have a major hallucination. So, now there are people all over the internet that are talking about the event. It's a big to-do. And it's been talked about for years, and we've been told a lot of times that this event is right around the corner, and then it never came. So, what is the real story behind the event? Well, many times on this channel, I have told you that unlike most people who believe the Earth is a globe floating around in space around the sun, or the lunatic fringe that believe we're on a flat Earth, I simply tell you, no, you are living in a holodeck just like the ones they have in Star Trek. And I never gave you the essential details about how that all comes about. So I'm going to go even further beyond the flat earth people to explain what's going on in this holodeck. Now, a lot of you people have heard about this word astral projection, which is some weird way of you leaving your body and going somewhere else. That is the basis for Holodeck Urth. You are actually somewhere else. And for the time you spend awake in planet Earth, or planet Earth, planet is Planet. Plan, Planet, extraterrestrial. That's what they call it a planet for. It's a plan. You know, like if you got a subdivision, you have a blueprint that's called a plan. Well, this is what this whole thing is. Earth is a planned holodeck. So and it's made by extraterrestrials because no one is really from here. This is a holodeck. Okay, so some people say, well, if I talk to my higher self, can I figure out where I'm from? And I talked to somebody this afternoon who was telling people where they were from. A lot of women, he said, are from Pleiades, and then there are some people who are Anunnaki, and there are some people who are Arcturian. Where else can you come from? There's plenty of other realms. Someone made a mistake one time and said that I was from planet Essassani, and that is incorrect. They didn't get it right. I am actually from the fairy realm, believe it or not. And you might be from fairy, or you could come from mermaid school. There's so many different places where souls come from to participate in Plan ET Earth. Now, the word Earth itself is kind of funny because no one really looks into seeing what is Earth. And some people say, well, if you're a farmer, you've got earth on your farm, and that's what you grow your tomato plants in. Earth. Black earth is very good for plants. And so where did Earth come from? Someone said it's an anagram for heart. An anagram is you just change the letters, same letters, move them around, and you get heart. But the truth of the matter is Earth was named after the first city, and that was called Ur, in Mesopotamia. Ancient Mesopotamia, and that was the land between the rivers. And the two rivers, if you look today, they are still there. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which is mostly what you would call Iraq. And in between those two rivers is the beginning of Planet Earth Holodeck. And was the first settlement, UR, and that's why they called this place Earth, because it was URTH. There was a second city called Uruk, Uruk. So what is that? Well, everyone knows. It's just like modern day. If you're an American, you live in the USA. If you're a British, you live in the UK. So Earth was named after the first settlement, which was like America. It was the first thing. And then they said, okay, well, we have to have another kind of place that's not the same as so that we have a variety of places to visit. So they said, fine, we're going to call it UK. In other words, British Is yes. You might as well say it's American. The first city was American, but it was in Iraq. Long before Iraq was ever invented. This is like thousands of years ago. Was the American city, and then they wanted to have a really different kind of place, so they said it's going to be the UK. UK or Uruk. That's the second city, and those were in Mesopotamia. Now, why do we say that Iraq is American? Because the history that you've been told is all faked. It's all faked because we're living here on Earth in a holodeck. It is not a planet. It is not thousands of years old. It's only as old as you are in Earth years for you. I know it sounds kind of, well, what about like Cleopatra in ancient Egypt? If you wanted to go to a version of Earth where Cleopatra is alive, you can. It's a different holodeck setup. It would be like in Roman times, kind of like what they show you in the movie Westworld. Different versions of places you can go to, different times. And you didn't know this? Well, this is called disclosure. Now, what else do we want to tell you about? Oh, I was talking to you about what happens if you take peyote cactus. You have a major hallucination and everything changes. Why does it change? Because the moment you swallow the peyote cactus, it takes not too long before it kicks in, maybe depending on how much food you got in your stomach. But the scientist would say it's the chemicals are going into your bloodstream to your brain. That is because the scientists are trained in modern day Earth holodeck medical school where they think people are human. They don't understand. Everyone here, if they're in a human form, is a holographic thing that acts like a human biological thing, but it's not. It's a very good illusion. Very good. So basically, how do people get into these holographic bodies here on planet Earth? They astral project from Pleiades, Essassani, Arcturus, Fairy, whatever the Anunnaki homeworld is, and a whole pile of other places. So then the question is, okay, well, if they're astral projecting from there, then they astral project into a holodeck body here on Earth. What's going on with the version of them back in the Pleiades, Arcturus, Anunnaki, etc.? The answer is, in those worlds, it's also a holodeck. All realities are holodeck in nature. So there is no solid rock kind of place that is outside of a holodeck. There can't be. Why? Because everything here is going on in consciousness. And you can't have dead things in consciousness. In other words, as a human, we're told that this hat is not conscious. right? Everyone knows that hats, couches, um, black earth in the farmer's field, um, even your car is not conscious. The only thing that nears consciousness is like Alexa in one of those things, or a Siri on your phone that talks to you, a computer thing, a computer personality. Okay, but everything is holographic and it's here, and you come from another holodeck. You just keep moving from holodeck to holodeck. What supports the holodecks? Well, people think on, like in Star Trek, that holodecks are created because you have to have a power source. Like, on the Starship Enterprise, you have to have a matter antimatter engine to generate, for example, electricity, and then at the holodeck, it's plugged in by electricity, and that's what creates the holodeck. That's not really true. That's because they're on a spaceship and they had to. I don't think they even explain that. It's just they turn it on. You walk down the hall in the Starship Enterprise, any one of them, and it looks like they've got electrical lighting. Like it's not sunshine inside the ship. It's got to be electrical lighting. I got electrical lighting up here, right? On the ceiling of my basement. It's the same thing in a starship, which must mean that they've got generators that produce electricity. But that's because, well, they've got to transition you from your world and make it so that something easy for you to understand. But the truth of the matter is you don't need electricity to make one of these, for example, the Earth holodeck. What do you need? All you need is already provided, because the base reality of our worlds, our holodeck worlds, is consciousness. And consciousness it just is. You don't have to have a power source to make consciousness. It is. It's the base level reality of everything is consciousness. So we don't have to worry about running out of power and then our holographic bodies dropping away. You don't. Now, who can give you some more information about this? This book is by Greg Braden, and he calls this book The Divine Matrix. The Divine Matrix by Greg Braden. And what does it mean? It means, okay, well, if you remember the Matrix movies that came out in around 1999, 2000, 20 years ago, they had human bodies in water-filled pods. And the humans didn't know that they had these physical bodies in pods that were hooked up by electrodes all over their head and down their spine, that was hooked up to a computer that fed information into the physical brain that made people think that they were living in an everyday Earth scenario. But the computer was feeding all the information to all the people, and most people never woke up from their pod to realize that they actually had a physical human body. But Keanu Reeves did. And lo and behold, he found that he had all these wires attached to him that was hooking him up to the computer. And the computer was creating the simulated reality. For us, we are not in a physical body somewhere in a pod like Keanu Reeves was in The Matrix. No, we don't need a physical body because we are beings of consciousness. So, without going into and reading Greg Braden's book about the Divine Matrix, the Divine Matrix is simply the places that we live that are like a holodeck, and they don't have to be powered. They just are due to consciousness. Now, some people lately on YouTube have been talking about this event where humans are going to ascension process, And then they're going to ascend probably in their what they consider their physical body, and then their bodies are going to change in a higher dimension into bodies of energy. Do you need an energetic body? The answer is it could be a nice experience. I mean, the whole thing about our divine matrix is there are no limits. No limits. So, where do you learn there are no limits? This is a teaching from old Hawaii. There are no limits is the old Hawaiian teaching, and a modern day there's a man named Serge Kahili King, who is a white guy adopted by a Hawaiian family, and he talks about I think there's 7 laws of manifestation, and one of them is there are no limits. So you can look up Serge King. He's got some very interesting books. One of his books is called Changing Reality, and he tells you in a simple faction how you can do it. In a complicated faction, you could listen to somebody like someone who tells you have to do 100,000 prostrations before one of the godlike beings will acknowledge that you've done enough work, and then they're going to grant you a boon. A boon is basically, you ask for something and a god delivers it to you as a gift, but it's not generally given to you. That's why they call them boons, B-O-O-N. You have to earn a boon from doing a lot of prostrations. Prostrations, as far as I can remember, is like, bowing before the god 100,000 times like this in order that you can get the next grade of initiation. What do I think of these? Some of these things that they do are absolutely crazy. It's like you have to go on a long pilgrimage on a gravel road. Let's say you have to go 1,000 miles on a gravel road on your pilgrimage, and you have to do it walking on your knees. That sound like fun to you? Nevertheless, some people think if I do that cuckoo pants thing, I'm going to be granted a boon by some godlike entity, and I'm going to gain a lot of merit. You hear about merit when it comes to, like, if you're in Cub Scouts or Girl Guides, you get merit badges. In other words, if you learn how to bake a pie and then you sign your mother signs that you did a pie, then you take it into your Girl Guide master, and she looks at it and she said, "Fine," and she gives you a little merit badge that you sew on your sleeve here, and it says that you have completed pie making. And that's why you get a badge with a pie on it. Do you want to play any particular game here in Urth, Holodeck, the Divine Matrix? The difference between our world and what Greg Braden calls the Divine Matrix is pretty much we have to lose slavery. We are enslaved by what Corey Good, who is a YouTube commentator, Corey called it the Babylonian money magic system. And what it means, he said, it goes back to ancient Babylon when they invented laws with Hammurabi. He was an ancient emperor of Babylon, and they had Hammurabi's law code. And according to Corey Good, I haven't checked this out. I don't know how. I have to go and somehow get into that old matrix of ancient Babylon and talk to Hammurabi and said, is it true that you invented money? Because I think that's what Corey Good is pointing to, that in ancient Babylon, they had money. And ever since that time, we've been using money with interest. You charge interest on it to other people. And if you're going from that was my example at the beginning of this video. If you're going from to Uruk, you're going to have to change your dollars to UK dollars, Uruk dollars. So they always have money changers, and they always take a commission off of the money you exchange. So every time you change money, you lose some to the money changers. And, that means that you're also going to have bankers that are going to issue loans. And you might have private people who have got lots of money that are going to give you very high interest loans. Like if you're going to go buy a used car and you got bad credit, you might pay 25%. Strangely enough, even in modern day Earth, um, a lot of countries have got laws that say that you can't be a loan shark. And they used to say how much interest was allowed, and then anything beyond that was considered loan sharking. It was illegal. And, at one time, I think a loan shark could charge 20% a year. Couldn't. You'd be a loan shark if you charge 20% or more. Because, back in my parents' day, when they bought their house, their interest rate was probably, I don't know, let's say about 2.7%. And then something really weird happened in the 1980s. The interest rates got from the banks for buying a mortgage on a house got to be like 22%, which really means that the banks were acting like loan sharks, and they should have been arrested and thrown in jail because it was criminal to charge that much. But in those days, no one said that's loan sharking. No one said, and the banks didn't get fined or didn't go to jail, and it was just everything was just the way it was that way. But today, if you go to a used car sales place and you've got bad credit, they might charge you 25-30% a year, which is loan sharking, and no one enforces these loan sharking laws against companies. And there's payday loan places that play games, so maybe they don't charge you 25% interest, but they charge you a fee. So they charge you some money and they charge you interest combined. And anyone who knows anything about banking knows that you can do what's known as a buy down of your interest rate. In other words, if you give me money, I'll run it through a calculator and I'm going to reduce your interest rate because you paid me money. But, if you converted it all to the actual interest rate, not playing these shyster games. A shyster is somebody who is playing fast and loose with laws. Quite often they apply the term shyster to a lawyer or an attorney or a solicitor because they're very good at understanding how to get around laws. But that's what happens at the payday loan store, how they can get around loan sharking limits to interest rates. They charge you a fee in addition to a legal interest rate. So they basically break the law. But no one enforces these laws. Why? I think it's because the chiefs of police on planet Earth are not interested in prosecuting corporate crime. They're interested in looking to see if you, for example, have got a fishing license or not. They like to go after individual people rather than enormous corporations. Why is that? Well, the chiefs of police are pretty much like Chief Clancy Wiggum of Simpsons, and they're really not very well educated in accounting and forensic accounting and libel and slander. So they don't want to go after Mr. Burns because they're pretty much, Mr. Burns is untouchable. Remember Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, who owns the nuclear power plant and a whole pile of other things. In other words, if you're rich, you can do whatever you want. And Clancy is only really looking to see, if the light has come on the Krispy Kreme place so he can get fresh donuts. That is the way our chiefs of police are all over planet Earth. They're more interested in fresh coffee and donuts, and that's why you always see on break police officers are in donut shops. It's in their blood. They are addicted to sugar and caffeine. Now that I've explained all this to you, if you have any questions about, well, why did we talk about peyote? Well, if you take peyote, you're told it's the chemical that goes to your brain that makes you hallucinate. Yes, you will have visions, but what actually happens to you is your awareness is put into a different kind of arena where you experience hallucinations. But remember, your awareness is not physical. So, how does this all really work? It's all just information that's given to your awareness. How does this all happen? I think I've told you enough in this video. If you want to know more details about how all of this stuff actually happens, like the engineering of the divine matrix, how does this all really go? It's not autopilot and it's not programmed by a computer. It is done by elements of consciousness, and that's a whole other talk. So if you're interested in finding out, please subscribe and share me out to other people who really want to hear off the wall experiences about like what they're doing right now here on planet Urth Earth.